ultimate guide to mastering the art of real estate. Dive into the world of immigration, mortgage solutions, home remodeling, insurance, real estate planning, and the ancient wisdom of Vastu. Elevate your living and make informed decisions with the insights and strategies shared by Nagaraj and Annaiah. Stay tuned for an enlightening experience.
Hello, Bay Area. Happy Friday. I'm Nagaraj Annaiah, the Bay Area top realtor. With today joined by April Held from Loan Lock. Today is all about mortgage, discussing about what's happening in the Bay Area mortgage. What's the trend, right? We are live today on Bali 92.3. If any questions on the mortgage, if any questions on the real estate, you know where to reach out. Our studio line numbers are 408 912 5038. Just repeat again, it's 408 912 5038. Hi, April. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Nagaraj. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, listeners. The today question on the floor is, it's a simple question. Most of them knows, but I want to understand, like, what do you think about? Are there any basically, even are there any differences on H1B home buying, right? Like in the mortgage perspective, do you think, are there any differences? Do you think any loan options different on H1B? Listeners, the question on the floor is on the H1B mortgage differences. You can say yes or no, or if you have anything to share also, you got any questions on the mortgage or a real estate, you can give us a call. April, what's happening on the mortgage rates? Like, what's going on with it? Like, can we brief upon this year's, what's the trend and everything?
Sure. It's a very exciting time. We've had interest rates go up dramatically last year. We're seeing some reprieve this year. So we've already in the first month, rates have gone down pretty considerably. I would say close to about 1% down. So I saw interest rates today at 6.125%. We haven't seen that in a long time. And moving forward, we're probably going to see the low 5% is what they're forecasting. So by the end of the year. So it's very exciting. Definitely a lot easier for folks to qualify nowadays, and also more comfortable for their payments. So we're really excited about that.
Listeners, I'm having a conversation with April L from a Loan Lock, and today is all about mortgage. The whole founder of Real Estate Playbook. Get the expert out there and discuss with them, because a lot of first-time home buyers are there, a lot of second-time buyers, like qualified investors who are looking for a different loan options, right? And you have something where you stuck. Give us a call. Yeah, we can talk about it. Our studio line numbers are a 408 912 5038. April Held is a qualified mortgage consultant, mortgage lender. So we can, if you have any questions on mortgage, also we can discuss about. Yeah, as you said, right? As federal as already as a stance, like basically on inflation, based on the inflation, how it, until I think they're saying up to a 2% inflation, right? They're saying they will not increase the rates, but once it's a 2%, then they might start decreasing their rate. That's what they're saying in. But good thing to notice is, like, there is no more rate hikes, which is like basically, right? Like we are seeing is, like, it was at some point of 2023, we were seeing the rates were consistently increasing in. Okay. But the trend on 2024 or the start of 2024 is like we are seeing that rates are going down by, right? Like now it's a 6.125. That's a considerably good rate if you're doing a 10% down.
It's a really good rate. They, historically speaking, rates anywhere over time of 6.75 or better is a really good interest rate. But I think we're going to be coming down to the fives again. We're going to have a bunch of folks that, if they purchased homes in the past couple of years, probably are going to have a great opportunity to refi later on this year.
That's a good thing, right? Like a lot of people have logged in at a 6.75 or maybe a 7% higher, right? For them, it's the best time maybe in a 6 months, depending on how the Fed decides. Then they can refinance it also. Especially Congress is facing an increased pressure to address a housing crisis. Like both Republican Democrats, right, are like basically coming up with to address this affordability of the housing crisis. Okay, they're trying to bring in a lot of changes. Basically, all this affordability was hit by what? Interest rate hikes and housing supply. Okay, at some point of the time, we were locked at 2%. Do you remember the days 2% during where we locked in with the 2%, right? So a lot of sellers doesn't want to sell their house. Correct. Because of that, since we are stuck in with that, it's already housing supply is a shortage, right? And especially in the cities around, like because of the lot of zoning restrictions, right? We can't have more homes also. All this is causing all this crisis on the housing supply. Listeners, we are talking about mortgage. If you guys are in like basically wants to buy a house, and if you have any questions on the mortgage, right, you can give us a call and we are happy to answer you. Our studio line numbers are 408-912-5038. The question on the floor is, can you buy a house in H1B, right? And what's the minimum down payment required to buy a house on H1B? April, the question is like, is there any difference between the secondary and investment properties, right? Like, how do you qualify them, right? Like, how are the rates for a secondary and investment properties?
So there's a little bit of difference. For qualification of a second home, since you're not going to be renting it out, you actually have to qualify for the principal, interest, tax, and insurance of that mortgage payment in addition to your primary housing. So for that, it's a little bit more difficult to qualify. You have to have a little bit more room. The normal lenders do have a little bit higher interest rate for those. I have investors that treat it the same as they used to, which is the same as a primary home. So fortunately, I have some options that it would be the exact same interest rate. But many other lenders may not have that. They look at it as a second home and a little bit more risk. I'm sorry.
So how much is a down payment required for the secondary homes? Like
10%.
Oh, it's secondary homes are the 10%?
Yeah, we can do 10% options. So that's a really good option. And
is there any kind of a rule like the secondary home needs to be like this much, like maybe 20 miles far from the primary home? Is it something like that, or like it can be in the same city also?
It has to make sense. So it has to be maybe a resort location. Maybe it's not too close to the primary residence. That might be a red flag for the underwriter. But say maybe somebody's family lives somewhere and they visit often. So it just has to make sense to an underwriter that you're not going to be buying an investment property and calling it a second home. So maybe it's near a lake, or maybe, it just has to make sense of somewhere that looks like you would go between your primary residence and that particular place.
Okay.
As a second home.
So basically the secondary home, right? It can be, let's assume like you got a 3,000 square footage home, right? And we want to downgrade to 1,000 square footage home or 1,500 square footage, but it might be a 15 miles from the current radius, right? Can we still treat it as, because we can say that this house is too big, I'm using it as can we still treat it as secondary home, or like how does it goes in?
If a person is downsizing, I would treat it as a primary residence.
Okay.
But it just has to make sense. So we figure out what are the reasons that they're downsizing, and we just spell it out to make a story that an underwriter will understand that this makes sense for the consumer.
Listeners, you are listening to Real Estate Playbook. I'm Realtor Nagaraj, and Annaiah having a conversation with an April Lyle on the mortgage options for the secondary home. And if you're an investment, how do you go about it? A lot of listeners like maybe thinking about upgrading their first house to a second house, right? Or maybe they live in Santa Clara County and they want to buy something maybe in the Lathrop or anything in the riverfront, right? Or they're planning to buy a vacation homes, right? Especially this time, if you want to buy something in a vacation, especially places like a Lathrop or a River Island where the prices are going up and it's a great place. If you're considering it, you can give us a call. Or like if you want to buy a second house in maybe in a Tracy Hills, right? How do you go for it? So that's what we are discussing in. So that's good to know. Like the investment properties, right, April? Like for that one, what's the minimum down payment we need?
So 20% is the typical down payment. Even units and such, typically most lenders, you need to put down 25% usually for some units, or 15%. Sorry, about 20 or 25% on 3 to 4 units. But we only require the 20% down on that.
Yeah. Again, depends on the lender to lenders. A lot of lenders might say 25%, but you have a great program saying that for investment properties, you just need a 20% down, right? Secondary homes are treated still as a primary residence rates, okay? But the qualifications depend on where is your second property comes in. For example, let's assume like a lot of buyers would have bought something like maybe 30-40 miles away from the office now, right? Since the offices are reopening, can we buy something closer to office and treat it as a second home?
It depends. So it just, once again, has to make sense to the underwriter. Yeah, I mean, if somebody is, maybe they've purchased someplace that's maybe more affordable, and then they have something that's closer to the office that they go to, absolutely, that might be a reason to be able to choose that as a second home. It just, the story has to make sense for living in that property and the use of that property.
Yeah, it's a great program, especially second homes, right? A lot of people didn't even know that the option called secondary, where you can qualify for the secondary home, right? Listeners, you're listening to Real Estate Playbook from Nagaraj and Annaiah, today having a discussion with an April held on the mortgage options and what's going on in the Bay Area real estate. If you have any questions and you are a first-time home buyer, right, and you have any questions on the mortgage, or an investor, or you want to buy in a second house, you can give us a call, discuss about. If you have anything, anything can be a simple question. One of the simple question I'm asking you guys: can you buy a house on H1B? Are there anything different loan programs for H1B? Right? If you have anything on that, you can just say yes or no, or like if you have anything to explain, also you can go ahead and do it. Our studio line numbers are 408-912-5038. One of the thing, right, like we were discussing, for the first time home buyers, right, what's the minimum down payment required, April?
We actually have programs that allow 100% financing, even if they're not a first-time home buyer. So it different loan amounts, it depends on the scenario. Then we have a 3% down option, 3.5% down option, 5%, and 10%. So a lot of it's going to depend on the area that they're purchasing, and basically the purchase price and loan amount.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. I didn't know about the 100% financing. Okay, how do you qualify for that 100% financing? That is like, which I was like, yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. It basically, I mean, you have to qualify for it. It basically is like a second mortgage that is used for the down payment. But it also do not have to be a first-time home buyer for that program. So yeah, so it's an interesting program. Now it's going to have a little bit higher interest rates, of course, because they're providing or helping to provide the down payment. But for some folks, that may be a good option.
So listeners, do you know you can buy a house without a down payment too? That's what we are discussing about today. If you have any questions, give us a call. Our studio line numbers are 408-912-5038. So that's very interesting program, April. Like 0% is down you're putting in. Lenders are okay to give you an 100% complete. But one thing you need to notice, or one thing is, as you called out, interest rates, right? See, the interest rates will be kind of a bit different from we're putting a 10% and you're going with a 0% down payment, right? Because the lenders are taking a risk always. Since the lenders take a risk, they charge you a little bit. So typically it would be around 1% higher. How it would be? Or a little bit higher.
Yeah, probably depending on credit score, about 1%, 1.5%, probably higher than the average rate based on credit score.
Yeah, I think a lot of buyers out there, right? They'll keep on thinking about, Nagaraj, I need to accumulate for my down payment funds. Let me do it. They would have waited for 10 years, right? Or 5 years, correct? Instead of take it now, with his big, and again it's there's a let's call it out, it's like again depends on your credit score and how much you make and your DTI. It's a, I think if a lot of people doesn't might be not knowing what is a DTI. Can we talk about DTI?
Sure, sure. So debt to income ratio, basically we're using gross income for what people are making.
Mhm.
And that's the qualifying income. We take all of the principal payment, interest, tax, and insurance, and then the minimum monthly payment of any installment debt, credit card, and such. And we divide that by the gross income. And that becomes your debt to income ratio. Depending on programs and such, you're looking at probably a back end debt to income ratio of 43% to 50% is the qualifying debt to income ratios that we need.
Yeah, to put it as simple, you make 100K gross, you can qualify up to a loan about what, like monthly up to max is 44K to 50K per year, right?
So
Loan,
all your debt, it can go up to
including
usually
everything.
about 50. So if you had no other debt whatsoever and you made 100 grand, then your payments would be 50,000 a year, which would be, give me a second, 50,000.
Well, listeners, you're listening to Real Estate Playbook when April is doing her calculations. If you have any questions on anything on the mortgage or anything on the real estate, you know where to call. Our studio line numbers are 408-912-5038. This numbers is only for these live shows. After the live shows, you can directly reach out to us separately. April will give out our number and my number. Always, you can go to nagarajhomes.com, click on the WhatsApp there. You can always reach out to me, right? This is just a studio line. If you have any questions which needs to be addressed, right? It's kind of it's doing a community service also. Like this same questions might be having other buyers out there, right, April? And they might be having in, so that you're basically helping them out also. This show is all about helping the buyers so that they can dream about buying, because especially April, I think I keep telling to the buyers out there, right? There's a, especially US, especially Bay Area real estate, we is kind of a piece of a cake, right? In one piece of a cake, how many people can buy it? Right? It's only, there are three ways you can buy it. One is you can go basically take it away, which is not allowed legally, right? The second is basically you pay what the sellers need. Correct. And basically when you pay for the seller's need, like there would be a competition. You are not the only person who is going on buying, right? So instead of if you look at the rates from last few years, rates has been increasing itself. When the rates decrease, you're also scared to buy. Correct. We have already one caller in. Let's take it. Hello, welcome to Real Estate Playbook.
Yeah, I had a question on.
Yeah, go ahead. So, sorry, your name, please.
Like, what makes sense if I'm living in a home with a really good interest rate and then I'm trying to find second home as an investment, and since the interest rates are higher right now, how does that make sense to buy a second home with still high prices going on in the Bay Area versus I should wait another couple of years or a year or so for the rates to come down and then make an investment? Or shall I sell this property and buy the second one as a primary home?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Before April answering it, let me answer on that. I think we had an initially discussion about the secondary home options, right? Since the secondary home options rates are similar to a primary residence, you can think about the secondary home, okay? And since you already logged in with the lower rates, a lot of sellers like you, or like a lot of investors who wants to buy a second house, they're renting it out. April, you don't believe it, like rented out my one property in my San Jose, I got 20 applications within a span of 1 day, right? That many especially renters are there. So based on where is your property, correct, depending on the location, so depending on the value of, like, maybe in the next 2 years how the property appreciation might happen, based on that we can think about it again. April, on the mortgage aspect, what do you suggest on that?
So is the question about downsizing to a home? Is that the
No, he wants to buy a investment property.
investment property or
So
second
he
home?
wants to buy an investment property as we did. What are the options he has?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's if you're buying an investment property, you can qualify using 75% of the potential rents on the property.
Mhm.
I think rates actually right now have been sitting in like the best that we've seen them in quite a while. Yes, I do think it's going to go down further. Personally, I would probably buy now and then refinance later is probably what I would personally do. You know, I think that they're going to come down further with an opportunity later on, but rates definitely right now, we're seeing a reprieve, which is really good. I would definitely look at the payments, have someone give you what the monthly payments are, make sure you're comfortable with them. And if you're comfortable with those right now, then I would move on it. We definitely are not going to see the 2s and 3s again, and probably in our lifetime. So we're in a more normal range now.
I think that was a golden period. You think we were in 2.5%? It was in a golden period, I can tell you. You never know, it might. But answer your question, right? As April said, it's not only investment option, like basically even you can consider a secondary rate, home options, right? That rates are really good for that. The rate matches to a primary residence rates. And for that one, you need a 10%. And I know that what you're talking about, like basically monthly payments, right? If your monthly payments going to be higher, right, you can keep some extra emergency funds. You can borrow it from there. So that way it makes a kind of a cushion. That's what I tell them. When the rates drop, a lot of people are putting in offers, going it high. Instead of that, have an extra cushion, have an emergency funds, so that way you can borrow it every month like that. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I should look into rental, like how much is the rent coming out of the property if I rent it out. I should have that analysis ready too before I make a call, right?
Yes, that is also one of the things you need to consider, that, right? Like how much the rent you get out from that. If it's too much negative, and if the property doesn't appreciate much, then maybe it's better way to give it out. But always remember, don't sell your first property until you buy your second property, because once you let go, it's very difficult to buy it,
Right.
especially in this Bay Area. Okay, always better to keep your first property until you buy your second one. Okay, any questions you have? Any follow-up questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, April, that's a great thing, right? That was the reason I was asking you about the secondary home things, right? A lot of people doesn't know there's a secondary home concept exists also. The rates are similar to primary residence, and a lot of lenders doesn't give a good rates for the secondary home.
That is correct.
Because I've seen with some lenders, secondary home rates are quite typically what, 1% higher. I've seen it. Okay, so especially if somebody wants to like downsize, somebody wants to buy a kind of a vacation home, you can use the secondary thing. But I think we have a limited time right now, but in the future, April will be discussing about like the complexity of the mortgages, right? Like why so much complex? I think the next episode we'll talk about, but let's talk about our question on the floor. Can people buy an H1B? What is your answer for that, April?
Absolutely. So anyone that has legal status to be in the United States can buy a home, and H1B is one of those, and there's no restrictions or anything with that, and you definitely can purchase a home. And if you have any questions, you can certainly give me a call.
Yeah. So we can't discriminate anybody, especially it's called a redlining. Okay, for everybody has an equal right of opportunity based on the income, based on that. Redlining is especially drawing a line and you can't qualify. People can't do that on the discrimination, H1B or anything. Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in today. Thank you so much. April, can you give out your number if somebody wants to reach out to you?
Absolutely. My telephone number is 949-306-8100.
All these episodes will be uploaded on Nagaraj and Annaiah's YouTube channel. Do please listen to it. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night. Thanks.
Good night. Thank you.